best friend said she liked your little eyes and lean face and walk and the way you spoke your English. Her name was Salam. You said you liked her dimples and long legs and handwriting. You both liked to eat smiling cow toffees. She was the last child in her family. You were an only child. The world was only big enough for the two of you, and your secret language was an endless giggle, which made the other kids jealous. Salam lived in a flat in a red two-story building in Baminya. You lived in a brown two-story building across the street. Some days after school, you and Salam stood together on the balcony of one of the buildings and watched Salam's two brothers and their friends on the hilly streets with their homemade kites, running and screaming until their heels kicked up puffs of Ethiopian dust. The boys ran into traders hawking CDs they carried in wide metal trays on their heads, or into horse-drawn buggies and donkeys burdened by goods, slowing down traffic. They avoided the next street, which had a mosque, because the imam would curse them if the kites entangled in the minaret. He had already made it known to their parents that flying kites was foreign, blaming them for exposing their children to strange ways. But best friend's parents told your parents that they had told the imam that he should not try and tell them how to raise their children in a free Ethiopia. So many afternoons you watched the kites rising against the distant coffee fields, then the beautiful hills, and cupped your hands over your eyes as the kites climbed into the wide, low blue skies. Some days there was no need to go to one another's home to be together. No, you and best friend stood on your own balconies and screamed your kindergarten rhymes to each other across the street, over the brown bird sitting on the electric and phone wires. The wires were cluttered with dead kites, trapped like butterflies in giant cobwebs. Your mommy didn't mind your loud recitations because she said you were only children. Your daddy was okay with it, but didn't want you to shout when he was taking his siesta, after which he would sometimes drive you around in his white car. Salam's parents weren't very okay with the shout, but what could they do? Some Saturdays, your mommy, or Salam, would walk both of you 2 streets down behind the church for your hair to be braided. Like twins, you always chose the same style. Some days you went to her place and watched the Disney Channel, and sometimes she came over to your place and you played snakes and ladders and ate dobro wot and spaghetti. One Sunday after church, which Salam attended with your family because her parents traveled, Daddy drove you two to Hotela Ferdwali to eat. You read out all the billboards on the long, beautiful Haile Selassie Adrana. Salam the ones on the right, you the ones on the left. At Hotela Ferdwali, Daddy picked a table outside under a big canopy and you sat down. You read to each other from the menu while he looked on proudly. You both ordered pizza while Daddy got a big dish of mahabrawai. Is hamburger pork? Salam asked and tossed a piece of mushroom in her mouth. Who said so? Daddy said. Haida, she said. I told you not to talk to Haida, you said, dropping your fork. She's not our friend. I didn't talk to her. I won't talk to you again. I'm sorry. You stood up and moved your chair away from her. Oh, no, Daddy said, pushing your chair back towards best friends. Come on, ladies. Best friends don't quarrel, is she? Yes, Daddy, you said, but she spoke to Haida. She promised never to speak to Haida, Daddy. I did not speak to her. She just came up to me and said I follow Christians and eat pork at Hacha Fardwali and ran away. I say, I'm sorry, okay? Tears came to her eyes. I won't talk to you again either, Salam shouted at you, and I won't even hug you. Oh, no, Salam, Daddy said, coming in between the two of you. He's kidding. She'll talk with you. She'll sit with you. He turned to you. Sweetheart, don't be mean to best friend. Other people stared at you, and children celebrating somebody's birthday under a canopy giggled. Salam heaved with sobs. Daddy loosened his tie and held her and dabbed her tears with a handkerchief. Your waitress, a lady with a silver nose ring, came over and taunted you, saying that such sweet sisters should not be quarreling and embarrassing their dad in public after church. Daddy said to you, you must make up with Salam or we go home now. Go look. Okay, Salam, I'm sorry, you said. I'll speak to you. Best friend, Hugsy Hugsy? She nodded. Okay, best friends, Hugsy. You hugged. The waitress clapped and cheered and pushed your chairs back together. Well, my Salam, I want to say this before we continue eating, Daddy said apologetically. You are always free to eat what you are comfortable with. Oh? Yes. Already my daddy said I could eat pork if I wanted. Did he? Yeah, sounding relieved. Yes. Because this evening I was going to ask your dad to talk to you. I'm going with him to Cinema Bahima to watch a Premiership football. I was just trying to tell best friend what Haida said. That's why I like your dad, he said, and rubbed her head. Open-minded, nice man. You sat down and began to eat, sipping fresh pomegranate juice with long red and white straws. You talked about the games you had played together when you got home and how much you looked forward to school the next day. Then, one day, after you and your family and best friend's family had gone to watch the Jimma bicycle race in the next town, you didn't wake up in your bed, but in Mommy and Daddy's bed. The flat was full of a burning smell. The streets were almost empty. Daddy said there was no school that day. All morning your parents didn't leave your side. The bedroom didn't have windows that faced Salam's flat. They sat with you and watched cartoons and later told you about their childhood and the Yethlachkese TV show they watched long ago in Addis Ababa. Daddy, acting the part of a Baba Taisfe, told you many children's stories. Mommy played Tirufit, assisting and fleshing out the stories. Mommy allowed you to spend a lot of time in the bath and brought your clothes to their room. Daddy made you read all your books aloud for him, recited church prayers. They didn't hurry to go to work. They didn't hurry to go anywhere. The house help didn't show up. You yawned and jumped out of bed. I'm going to see best friend. Come and sit down for a minute, Mommy said, patting the space between her and Daddy. He went and sat down. He looked at Daddy, who was looking at the wall. He cleared his throat and said, Honey, we don't want you to play with that girl anymore. What girl? That Muslim girl, Mommy said, moving her huge body next close to you. Best friend? Silence. You looked at Mommy, then Daddy. They couldn't be serious, he thought, and waited for them to say it was a joke. No big deal, Daddy said, shrugging. There were riots last night. Houses were burned in our neighborhood. Salam's flat? No, he said. Can I go talk with her? We said no, Mommy said, looking you straight in the face. No, I just want to hug her, please. We understand how you feel, Daddy said. We really do. At 6, you're a bit too young to understand these things. Listen up, sweetie, she said. You're our only child, our only child. But I really miss her. Do you know her parents have also told her to keep away from you, she said. They did? I Salam said that? Who'll play with me? We will play with you, Mommy said. Daddy rubbed her back and translated what Mommy said. Karishe Gama for what if what who? Who will play with Salam? Haida, he said. Haida? Her brothers then, he said. You don't worry about that. But I don't want Haida to play with her. I don't like her. You threw the remote control on the floor and ran to your room before they could hold you back. You opened the big window blinds and looked at Salam's house. A part of her building was burned, but not Salam's flat. The building was now red and black because of the fire. Some of the burned flats looked like empty black shells, like the rock-hewn blocks, as solid as ever. With the blinds and windows gone, you saw inner walls and parts of singed furniture. But Salam's flat was fine, and the blinds were closed. It looked lonely because of the fire. Looking around, you saw black smoke still rising from other houses. The sky was dirty. The donkeys and horses were gone, and a cluster of damaged buggies stood by the street corner like unwashed dishes in a sink. Even the birds were absent from the wires. You wanted Salam to come out onto the balcony. You wanted to see her face. Your heart began to beat faster because you imagined her standing there behind the blinds waiting for you. You imagined her sitting on the bed with her parents. You imagined her being told that she would now have to pick a new best friend. You saw her playing with Haida. You saw them going to braid hair and heard them giggling, heard them addressing each other as best friend. You balled your fists and you wanted Salam to run out onto the balcony. Part of our house has been burned too, Daddy said, squatting beside you, holding your shoulders. If you open the window, the smoke will come in. It's bad out there. Your daddy's Dugat has been vandalized, Mommy said, sitting on your bed. Where is Salam? They're fine, she said, and Daddy pulled you away from the window and back to your bed. Your daddy and her daddy spoke this morning about you two. There's tension between us and them. Did you quarrel with M.A. Salam? I know she's a sweet woman, she said. Daddy was quiet, fidgeting with the broken remote and the batteries. On the wall of your room you saw the world map your teacher, Ayete Mulu, had taught you to trace in school. Your eyes came to Africa, our continent, which best friend had penned on the map in her sweet handwriting, and you fought back tears. Mommy hugged you. Daddy, did you quarrel with Abe Salam? Not us, as in us, Daddy said. It's not personal, Mommy said. You know they're Muslims. Yes. Faith differences, he said. Just faith differences. Faith. Complex, she said. It's a difficult time, he said, nodding. Are they bad people? No, not really, she said. Okay, you said, though you understood nothing. Are we going to school tomorrow? Nothing tomorrow, Daddy said. Soon, baby, soon, Mommy said. That evening, the lights came on in Salam's flat. You rushed and opened your blinds and looked, and her blinds were also open, but nobody was there. You pinched yourself for not being there when the blinds parted. You waited there in silence, hoping for someone, a shadow, to walk by. Nothing. For the next 2 days, when Mommy left the house, Daddy stayed with you. When Daddy left the house, Mommy stayed with you. The streets were filling up again. The birds had returned to the wires. Your house help didn't return. You dreamed bad dreams of Salam, even in your afternoon naps. In one dream, she turned her face away from you and would not answer your greetings. When she looked at you, she wore a scowl, which burst her dimples. On her balcony, she recited the multiplication tables with Haida and taught her beautiful handwriting and shared her smiling cow toffees with her. Haida's English became better than yours. While Haida's face became leaner and prettier, and Salam liked her walk, you became ugly and twisted like the old coffee trees of Jimma. You felt so bad you sobbed, and Haida came to hug you. She told you that it wasn't Salam's fault that her parents wanted her to avoid you because you weren't one of them. You cried all the more because it was Haida who was hugging you, not best friend. In the afternoon, you pretended to be reading in your room so that you could watch Salam's flat behind your blind, in spite of the dreams. You were sure she would not come onto the balcony, but you kept vigil because you wanted to see if Haida would visit her. But suddenly, Salam tiptoed onto the balcony. Against the burned-out flats, she looked like a ghost. Her face was pale against the afternoon sun and seemed to have deep wrinkles, like the top of a hambisha bread. She looked skinny and even shorter in the few days you hadn't seen her. Her shamo, gauze-like white material covering her from head to toe, fluttered in the wind. Would she run back if you appeared? If you disobeyed Mommy and Daddy and spoke to her, would she disobey her Mommy and Daddy and respond? Or would she report you to her parents who might come to your parents? Would she snub you like in the dreams? Afraid, you hid and poured your gaze out on the sun like a cold day. Salam stared at your flat, but you didn't move. She grabbed the balcony rail and looked into the streets this way and that way, and you tried to follow her gaze in case she was expecting Haida. At dinner, Mommy and Daddy told you to cheer up. They told you not to nibble at your food, chatted excitedly, like Salam and Haida did in your dreams, and poured you more and more Coke. Tomorrow afternoon, Mommy said, we'll travel to Adidas to see our relatives. When are we coming back? We've not even left, Daddy said. What's wrong with you these days? You broke the remote the other day. Get over it. Darling, it's okay, she said, calming him down. Then she turned to you. We'll be back in a week. Mahima is too tense now. I don't want to go. Hey, what language is that? She said, tapping into the mashosh, our handmade wicker hourglass table. And it's rude to interrupt when another person is speaking. You closed your mouth so they would not scold you. You started eating up, since they were now waiting for you. You cut a big piece of inherna and poured the meat sauce into a pot of vegetables onto it. You rolled it and turned up one end of the flat, spongy bread so the vegetables and sauce wouldn't leak, and began to chew from the other end hurriedly. You drank the Coke, drank the water, and thanked them. You returned to your room while they talked about how the government had kept the complex thing from the news and how it had done the same thing when Muslim radicals suddenly slaughtered Christians in Jimma churches 2 years back. Next afternoon, you came onto the balcony. Salam also appeared on her balcony. You looked at each other without words. You followed each other's gaze to the coffee fields, to the hills, to the sun. The sky was cloudy, the streets emitted a low buzz below, and 2 donkeys brayed in the distance. The winds came from the hills, fresh and steady. The birds lined the wires, some facing you and others facing her, in silence, as if they were awaiting the beginning of a race. Slowly Salam lifted her hand and waved to you as if the hand belonged to another person. You waved back slowly too. She opened her mouth and slowly mimed to you and mimed back, "I can't hear you." She waved with 2 hands and you waved with 2 hands. She smiled at you. Her dimples were perfect, little dark cups in her cheeks. You opened your mouth and smiled, flashing all your teeth. "Hugsy, Hugsy," you mimed to her. There was a puzzled look on her face. You embraced the wind with both hands and gave an imaginary friend a peck. She immediately hugged herself, blowing you a kiss. She looked back furtively and gave you a signal to disappear and rushed inside herself. You retreated too, behind the blind. And Salam surfaced, her angry face framed by a scarf. She looked at your flat and scanned the streets and went back in. You smiled because you had discovered a new language. You went to Mommy and Daddy and asked them when you were leaving Adidas. "Adidas will be fun," Mommy said, and continued packing. "You'll make new friends there." "Yes, Mommy." Daddy paused from sipping his beer. "Good girl. I'll buy a new remote."